The Committee on Homeland Security will come to order. Without objection, the chair may declare the committee in recess at any point. Without objection, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kamick, is permitted to sit on the dais and ask questions to the witness. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony on the full-scale scope and pace of threats posed to the homeland. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. 22 years have passed since September the 11th. Since then, the nature of the threats we face has evolved, and the security challenges are becoming more dynamic each day. I don't say this lightly. This is one of the most dangerous times in the history of the United States. Some of the greatest threats include an open and lawless southwest border. Ask any border sheriff, or for that matter, the mayor of New York City. The rising threat of terrorism, rogue nation-state actors, and criminal elements seeking to do us harm, and efforts by foreign adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party to target our critical infrastructure. Of course, we also have the wars in Israel and Ukraine and rising Chinese aggression in the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea. To overcome these significant challenges, we must take a clear-eyed and holistic look at these threats. First, we're facing an unprecedented crisis at our southwest border. In just 3 years, the administration has systematically dismantled our nation's border security and created the worst border crisis in American history. While my friends on the left defend these actions, though now maybe less so than they did at the start, it is clear that this crisis is not the result of budget cuts, changes in Border Patrol resources, or changes in the immigration laws passed by Congress. What has changed was the cancellation of effective policies that had secured our borders. The Biden administration ended proven policies like Remain in Mexico, asylum cooperative agreements, and construction of new border wall systems. As a result, people tested the system, were released into the country, called home, and millions more came. A lot like a college town bar that doesn't card. Before long, they have a line out the door. Worse, as acknowledged by AG Garland, Attorney General Garland, the drug cartels have taken advantage of this policy shift and executed a strategy pushing mass waves of people to tie up Border Patrol and then bypass them with thousands of pounds of fentanyl, killing Americans at an unprecedented rate. Worse, as acknowledged by Attorney General Garland, the drug cartels have taken advantage of this policy shift and executed a strategy that is basically resulting in mass human trafficking. Under Secretary Mayorkas, we just saw a record-breaking year for illegal immigration. CBP reported 2.47 million alien encounters along the southwest border in fiscal year 2023. Since taking office, Secretary Mayorkas has overseen more than 6.5 million southwest border encounters, 7.8 million nationwide encounters, and more than 1.8 million known gotaways, all records. To put this into perspective, the number of illegal immigrants who've entered our country since President Biden took office is greater than the population of 33 of our nation's states. I'll repeat that. More than 33 out of our 50 states. Furthermore, under Secretary Mayorkas, violent Mexican cartels are making record profits. In fact, the New York Times reported that cartels earned around $500 million a year in 2018 on human smuggling. Today, they earn an estimated $13 billion. The failure of this administration's border policies has created a humanitarian and national security crisis as transnational criminal organizations prey on vulnerable migrants and sneak across violent felons and individuals on the terrorist watch list. And yet, Secretary Mayorkas has continued to mislead Congress and the American people, claiming that this is what a secure border looks like. Second, malicious activity by nation-state actors and terrorism poses a direct threat to the United States homeland. Without question, the homeland is less safe under this president. The catastrophic Afghanistan withdrawal 2 years ago signaled weakness and a lack of leadership to the world. Our nation's adversaries have been emboldened to attack our allies and our friends and are undermining our security here at home. Significant threats to our cities and our local communities are only growing. As each of you recently testified before the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs, foreign terrorist organizations, including those supported by Tehran, have gained a sense of momentum following Hamas's brutal terrorist attack against Israel last month. These terrorist organizations continue to call for attacks against the U.S. at home and abroad. This includes al-Qaeda, which, as Director Wray has pointed out, has issued its most specific call to attack the U.S. in the last 5 years. As our adversaries seek to further destabilize the Middle East, we must confront how these threats directly impact our own homeland security. According to DHS, 294 aliens whose name appear on the terrorist watch list were stopped trying to cross our southwest border between ports of entry since FY 2021. Compare that with 11 individuals stopped in the 4 years before FY 2017 through 2020. Think about that for a moment. It's intuitive. Why would these individuals, who under the previous president only had 11 attempts to cross and were caught, suddenly feel like they could try and succeed? Policy changes. In the last 2 years, CBP encountered over 6,000 special interest aliens from Afghanistan, 1,600 from Pakistan, 659 from Iran, and 123 from Iraq between ports of entry. Additionally, DHS documents obtained by this committee show that more than 20,000 Russians, nearly 230 Afghans, and more than 1,800 Uzbeks have been released into the country via the misguided CBP One app, mass parole program with minimal or no vetting. And these are just the ones we know about. How many other individuals posing a national security threat have been among the 1.8 million known gotaways? No one knows. And that is terrifying. Our committee has been engaged with DHS, the FBI, NCTC, to ensure resources are appropriately allocated to counter these threats from terrorism. That said, more must be done. We are still waiting on sufficient information on the Biden administration's handling of the heightened national security risk posed by a massive number of aliens with terrorist ties illegally crossing the southwest border. We will not be deterred. We demand DHS's full compliance and without delay. Compliance that I might add is dictated by the Constitution. Third, anti-Semitism is rising, and threats against communities of faith in the United States are reaching historic levels. Anti-Semitic attacks have risen sharply in the United States since October 7th. Foreign terrorist organizations like ISIS have called on its extremist supporters to target Jewish communities in the United States and Europe. The free world pledged never again nearly 80 years ago. Now it's time we stand firm and united against this evil. We must not let these anti-Semitic attacks and the increasingly hateful rhetoric become a harbinger of something worse to come. We must do all we can to protect houses of worship and vulnerable communities from such targeted violence. Fourth, cyber attacks continue to undermine our homeland security. The cyber threats we face from malicious nation states and cyber criminals are increasingly complex. This summer, the federal government experienced multiple incidences, including right before the Secretary of Commerce's visit to China. Our critical infrastructure is also under attack. This year's annual threat assessment of the United States intelligence community highlighted the threat that adversarial cyber actors pose to our critical infrastructure owners and operators. DHS, CISA, and the FBI have a crucial role to play in supporting these owners and operators to defend against and respond to these threats. Finally, we must address the challenge posed by the CCP. Against the backdrop of all these threats lie the specter of a regime that continues to challenge the United States economically, technologically, diplomatically, and militarily. Through its relentless espionage, the CCP is stealing U.S. intellectual property, trade secrets, and other sensitive data of Americans and American companies. Over the past year alone, the CCP has increased its espionage efforts against the homeland in a variety of ways. These include the CCP's surveillance balloon, collecting intelligence on sensitive sites, and Chinese nationals posing as tourists to access our military installations and other sensitive sites. And Chinese nationals who have crossed our southern border at unprecedented levels. 24,000 apprehensions of Chinese nationals at the southwest border in FY 2023 alone, a 1,100% increase from last year. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see there's intentionality there. If recent reports are correct, the CCP also operates dozens of overseas police stations, which aid their transnational repression effort by intimidating and threatening Chinese dissidents abroad. DHS and the FBI must ensure that transnational repression tactics and schemes by foreign governments cannot continue on American soil, and we stand ready to help. The CCP has also made strides in infiltrating our nation's education system. It should concern every American that billions of dollars from the CCP are flowing into our K-12 classrooms and institutions of higher education. This is a systematic effort by the CCP to expand its influence within America's classrooms and promote its authoritarian and anti-American agenda. So what is the Homeland Security Committee doing about these threats? Well, first, in May, we passed H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act, the most comprehensive border security legislation in decades. We have addressed cyber threats head-on through a whole-of-nation approach. We've passed legislation encouraging responsible use of open-source software in the federal government and building DHS's cyber workforce. I've convened a group of committees across Congress to discuss and develop solutions to this problem that implicate multiple committees of jurisdiction. Just last week, this committee advanced Congressman Pfluger's legislation to prohibit DHS funds from flowing into universities that host Confucius Institutes and Chinese entities of concern. Further, we passed Congressman Guest's common sense legislation to counter the CCP's brazen espionage and theft of U.S. innovation by barring DHS from purchasing drones from the PRC or other foreign adversaries. We have held multiple hearings to examine the evolving threat of terrorism more than 2 decades after September the 11th and their implications on the homeland, including a recent hearing where we received confirmation of the immediate and significant threat the Iranian regime poses to the United States homeland. This committee has also demanded information on individuals from Uzbekistan and other countries who used a smuggler with ties to ISIS to enter the United States through our southwest border. We also demanded information on DHS's screening and vetting of Afghan evacuees in the wake of our catastrophic withdrawal. Most recently, we've requested documents and information from both DHS and the FBI on terrorist threats at the southwest border. The Department and FBI's delays and lack of responsiveness have become an unacceptable pattern. Make no mistake, we will continue to use every tool at our disposal to secure these answers for the American people. I look forward to a productive conversation about the current threats to our homeland and the actions being taken to prevent them. I thank our witnesses for being here, and I look forward to your testimony. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning and welcome to our witnesses, Secretary Mayorkas, Director Wray, and Director Abizaid. We welcome you. With one notable exception, during the prior administration, you and your predecessors have regularly come before this committee to discuss security threats facing the homeland and how your department and agencies are keeping our country safe. Thank you for being here today and for your service. And please convey our thanks to the dedicated public servants who work for you and for all of us every day. This worldwide threats hearing takes place with a war going on in the Middle East, persistent threats from foreign terrorist organizations,